All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules to join us in these training sessions that we are hosting. So today is going to be the first of four that we are covering, and primarily today is a bit more didactic than the other sessions that we are generating, just because we have to, I guess, convey a bit more information to you on what we're going to do, what we're going to expect of you. So yeah, stay tuned, and the following sessions will be quite a bit more interactive in that sense. And of course, my slides aren't advancing. There we go. All right, so we're just going to take a few minutes to get to know each other a little bit more, and we'll just go in sequential order. So I'll just call out your name, and you can just notice it or just release a few of your information. I have some prompts here that we can follow. So firstly, you can state your name and relay something, an interesting factoid about yourself. You can tell us a bit more about briefly tell us a bit more about the project that you are involved with on ChildBright. And then lastly, give us perhaps a bit more of a brief synopsis of your research and or educational background. So I'll get things started. I'm Pierre, and I am currently the coordinator for the network-wide training program that we are establishing. And so I guess an interesting factoid about me is English is my second language. And as of November, I have been a Canadian citizen. So I finally got to vote in BC's election. So that was great. I finally got to mark my X. So democracy in action, I guess. Now, in terms of my background, I spent the majority of my academic experience as a basic researcher. My research experience focused primarily on adult onset neurodegenerative conditions such as ALS, where I primarily was working with animal models and culture models to kind of model the disease a bit better and get more of a sense of the underlying sort of mechanistic underpinnings that result in disease pathogenesis. So that led to a master's degree that I finished a few years ago, and through quite a meandering road, got me interested in this concept of patient-oriented research, and that has led me to where I am today. So I'm going to pass the baton on to Mary Jo, who is she's been assisting our training program this summer. So yeah, so let's give you a second to introduce yourself, Mary Jo.
Hi everyone. I'm Mary Jo, and as Pierre said, I'm the project assistant for ChildBright's training program. An interesting fact about me would be that I was born and grew up in Vancouver and have been ever since, and I've lived on the same house ever since I was born. I'm a fourth year biology student at UBC, and previously I was a research assistant in rheumatology, also at BC Children's. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Jo. So Brett, you are up next. So if you can just make sure you unmute yourself with the little green button, that should hopefully do the trick. Brett, are you there? Oh, his mic's not working. Oh no, no worries. We will skip over to Leo. How about you follow those prompts and give us a bit of more sense of your background?
Hi, so my name is Liel. I guess an interesting fact about me is I was born in Germany, although I'm better in English than I am in German, that's for sure. I grew up mainly in the US and Canada. And I'm currently doing research at SickKids with Dr. Eyal Cohen. I'm writing a systematic review on the health outcomes of having a child, on the parents of having a child sorry, one second. With having a child with special healthcare needs. So that's my research project, and I'm a second year student at McMaster University in psychology, neuroscience, and behavior.
Great, thank you so much, Leah.
That's...
All right, moving on to, I guess, yeah, Eliza, you're here. Yeah, feel free to jump in. All right, sorry. So Eliza typed in, so I will read it to everyone. So Eliza's saying that she's allergic to mosquitoes and coffee. Oh my goodness, as a student, that's a terrible thing to be allergic to. I'm involved with the Imagine study at BC Children's, and she's going into her third year of the Integrated Sciences program, where she's integrating both neurobiology and genomics. Oh, that's great. And I guess, yeah, I'm on site too, so maybe next time we can have Eliza and the two other candidates who are local, we can join up and maybe have a quasi in-person session as well. All right, so it doesn't look like Shannon has joined yet. So I'm going to go off to Chelsea. And yeah, so Chelsea, feel free to chime in.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Yo, and my fun fact, I guess, is I'm an equestrian, so my horse's name is Dino. I'm involved with the Strongest Families Neurodevelopmental Project, and so we are adapting an online program for parents who have children with neurodevelopmental disorders who also have behavioral and or emotional problems as well. And so about my research and educational background, I just graduated from St. FX with my honors psychology degree. And so I did my own thesis there. And I worked for 4 years in a research lab in pain research in preemies. And now I'm working at the IWK in Dr. Pat McGraw's research lab.
Great. Oh, thank you so much. That sounds really interesting. And then lastly, that brings us to Simon.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Simon. An interesting fact about myself is that I'm from the States. I'm from Portland, Oregon, which I guess isn't too different from here, but I love the outdoors as well. I am working in Harold Seiden's lab on a project titled Optimizing the Pain and the Management of Pain and Irritability in Children with Severe Neurological Impairments, and I'll be working on an outreach strategy with them and some web redesign, so knowledge translation based on the outreach we conduct. A synopsis of my background is, well, actually, yeah, so I'm studying library and information studies here at UBC. I'm also here at the BC Children's Hospital with the others. And so my background is in politics and history. So I'm not necessarily coming from a science background, but I have been working at medical libraries for the past couple of years.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's definitely a different perspective, and yeah, that's really, really interesting.
Thanks.
Yeah, great. All right, so I'll stop having you look at my face. So that's great. Thank you so much. And I'm hoping that over the next 4 or 3 sessions, I guess, that we will get to know each other a little bit more and kind of see what all has gotten us interested in this idea of patient-oriented research and what sort of beneficial effects this ultimately can have on our research endeavors. So as we mentioned, today's session is going to be primarily a introductory session where we are going to cover a bit of an overview of what the studentship training program is going to look like. And ultimately, you have received much of that information in the package that went out recently. So everything you need should be contained in there, but it probably doesn't hurt to just review and make sure we are all on the same page. And this will also give you an opportunity to ask any questions if anything was unclear in what we had sent your way. So in terms of what we're going to be covering as an overview of the studentship program, we're just going to look at some of the deadlines and look at some of the requirements. And lastly, look at what the overall goals are going to be, like what the intended outcomes are for what we hope you get out of participating in these sessions, And last but not least, we are going to tackle a brief overview of what Canada's strategy for patient-oriented research is looking like, and how that all came about, and why CIHR is attempting this sort of research endeavor in Canada at this point in time. And then lastly, we are going to, as we alluded to in the outline that we had forwarded your way, was that we were hoping to solicit your participation in a fun, hopefully fun, studentship project that shouldn't take too much of your time, but we're giving you the entire length of the summer term to get that done. So at the end of today's session, we are going to input your names in a lottery and have the output determine the order that you get to choose any of those 7 prompts that were previously circulated. So as we mentioned before, we're going to have 4 webinar sessions, and they range from introducing the concept of patient-oriented research all the way to looking at what patient participation in research projects look like, what sort of drivers or barriers to their participation exists, and how these can be overcome. And lastly, is exploring what sort of benefits adopting a strategy like this poses on the research project. So what does having the patient voice at the table contribute to your overall research agenda and perhaps the impact of the work that you do? So the way that we have it set up is each week or each webinar session, there are a series of written, I guess I can pull this guy up. There is a series of assigned readings that we were hoping you would cover. And of those, there usually is a select set of pre-webinar discussion questions that we have circulated. And so these are just a way for you to perhaps delve a bit more into the work that was presented, and gives us an opportunity to kind of engage with you on the level of the discussion board, and just explore the concepts a bit more. So in the event that you haven't visited the Studentship website quite yet, if you go to cbstudentship.wordpress.com, you come to our main landing page, and on there we have all of the, for each webinar session we will have the material posted, so you can download it or you can access it through your the Word document that we have circulated. But importantly, we have this online forum that you can click on, and that is where we will have you kind of explore these questions. And as you see, so on session 2, we have them not broken down, but you can explore your questions in more depth there. Now, the way that we have it set up is that we have assigned you with one of the other studentship participants. So feel free to kind of brainstorm with them if you feel like it, to come up with a condensed answer to the question. But you can answer it in any way that you really feel. You can write a paragraph, you can do a bullet point form, but it is important that you try to have this in at least 24 hours before the session. So the Tuesday of the webinar session would be a good time for you to kind of shoot to have that done. And as we said, it's just a casual way to kind of interact with the material in a bit more detail and kind of set the tone for what we cover during the webinar sessions. And again, it's not mandatory that you collaborate with your assigned partner, but it might make things a bit easier if you do so. And lastly, we definitely encourage you to review the answers from for the other questions that the other participants have provided, just so that, again, we can glean a bit more of a deeper understanding of what the material was trying to convey. So as you noticed—
I hate to interrupt.
Please go ahead.
Sorry, I was just wondering, I hadn't received that package over email.
Oh, no.
I was just wondering if after the webinar you would mind sending to me.
Sure, Chelsea. I will make sure I send that to you. And if you don't hear back from me like right after, maybe I got your email
I'll
wrong.
email you.
Exactly. Great. Terrific. So I'll make sure that I will forward that out your way. All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And then, so since you really, you said are the first cohort of studentship recipients, we really want your feedback to incorporate in future iterations of the program. So you've already taken the time to fill out that pre-studentship survey that we had circulated, so thank you for that. That's great. And we're hoping that we can incorporate that feedback that you had provided in the last 2 sessions of this program. So that's really great that your input already actually is having an impact on how we are designing it. So in addition to that pre-studentship survey, following each webinar session, there is a link that you would notice on that document that was circulated. But we'll also just send a reminder email out right afterwards so that you can take a few minutes just to quickly jot down your thoughts so that we can review that and make sure that we learn from it and further enhance the program. And lastly, at the end of the 4 sessions, there will actually be a post-studentship survey as well, which is a bit more general and just tries to gauge your input on the overall impact of the training and whether you had found it beneficial and what else you would incorporate to make it better. All right, that brings us to our studentship program. And as I mentioned, we are going to assign the lottery today. With the idea that the deadline is kind of at the end of the term, at the end of the summer, just before you all go back to class. And the idea is that it's kind of, the prompt is situated in a way to engage you on several elements of what patient-oriented research is, with the main impetus being that you creatively tackle the prompt. So we are quite flexible. You feel free to suggest any other way of tackling it, but a few suggestions that we have is either doing a short write-up, informal blog post of some sort. If you want to be really creative, you can write a haiku, or one of the suggestions that we have is just making an informational diagram, and that's kind of what we had stressed in that package. But yeah, there's no, aside from the prompt, there's no real criteria as to how you go about it or how you answer it. So it's hopefully giving you a chance just to be a bit more creative with the material and come up with a rather interesting sort of creative output. All right, so in the broad scheme of things, the overall program goals that we have with this program is to just introduce you to the idea of patient-oriented research and what the fundamental principles are that have been crucial to the strategy and why it seems to be such an important avenue of research at this point in time. We will spend some time exploring what some of the drivers and inhibitors of patient-oriented research is, specifically what is inhibiting patient participation in research. So as we will see, there is quite a significant barrier in terms of just having a lay sort of audience at the table and switching things up from the status quo as how it's always been quite academic and researcher driven. And lastly, or thirdly, I guess, is to give you an appreciation for what sort of valuable input the patient perspective can bring to the table and where and how this can be better incorporated into the overall research plan. And then lastly is, I guess, a bit more long-term in understanding what sort of impacts patient-oriented research can have on healthcare research, and whether this actually is a better strategy to employ as opposed to the traditional way that things have been going on for eons. So before we move on, I just want to open that to questions. So if you have any questions about the program outline or the structure or the studentship program, feel free to ask them now. And if not, we'll move on. But we will have a few more opportunities for questions. So if you think of anything else down the road, we can definitely tackle it then. All right, so moving on. So Canada's strategy for patient-oriented research is a major initiative of Canada's National Research Funder, and ultimately it's about ensuring that the right patient receives the right intervention at the right time. In essence, the strategy is about bringing knowledge to action and bridging that ever widening gap between the bench and the bedside. And as you can imagine, this is a rather industrious and complex undertaking. So it requires a concerted effort between federal, provincial, and territorial partners who are all dedicated into the integration of research into care by not only taking into account the researcher's perspective, but engaging with both patients and the ultimate knowledge users, healthcare providers. So why do we need the strategy? Well, just through anecdotal experience, it's not hard to imagine that research findings don't always translate into quality care. Speaking from my experience, as I mentioned, I was a basic researcher focusing on ALS. And I was primarily working with an animal model that carried a very specific genetic mutation that was identified way back in the mid 90s. And at the time, this was the only real sort of hope we had for creating a cure for ALS. But it turns out that a mutation in this gene is really only estimated to account for about 1 to 2% of all ALS cases. However, due to the horrific burden that this disease poses and the lack of any alternative models, for the last 20 years, any potential therapy that has indicated some sort of positive outcome in this mouse model has been subject of a clinical trial. And to date, there was about 50 clinical trials using drugs that were positive in these mice. And none of them have actually had any measurable effect on the rate and course of the disease. And when you take a step back, this should really not be that surprising, because you're taking a clinical cohort of patients, some have the mutation, the vast majority of them have the disease due to some unknown cause. So when you have a therapy that's generated against a very specific genetic mutation, it's in all likelihood not going to affect the large majority of patients. Now, on the clinical end of things, the reason why some research findings never make it into more practical and effective care is really twofold. One, medical practitioners, so your doctors and nurses, they are inundated with a enormous amount of information every year. I think current estimates say that there's about 2 million published articles per year that need to be sifted through, and it's highly unrealistic that anyone can physically accommodate such a monumental task. But secondly, if you look at our healthcare system, especially the way it's set up in Canada, it's a very complex and fragmented system. And ultimately, everything comes down to being more containing costs more effectively. And that really is not an environment that is conducive to that sort of top-down change, because you ultimately just want to maintain the status quo and not have to spend more money to do healthcare interventions. So shifting focus to the patient population, CAHR has estimated that about 50% of patients don't actually receive treatments of proven effectiveness. So this kind of speaks to the whole idea of personalized medicine, where we're just trying a one shoe fits all sort of approach, where if it worked in patient A, it should work in patient B. But as we're finding more and more that healthcare is a lot more complicated and a lot more personal, it should be a lot more personalized, since we all react to these medications, right, whether the dose or the actual chemical structure of the medication in a different capacity. So if we are adopting this shotgun approach, it really does not it does not have a positive outcome in many cases. And if it works for you, that's great. But unfortunately, it seems that for nearly half of the patients, any given treatment does not really meet their needs. Secondly, there is about a quarter of patients who either get misdiagnosed and ultimately do not get the care that they need, or are put in unnecessary harm due to being prescribed some sort of treatment strategy that perhaps is not as applicable to their unique situation. And lastly, the reason why there is this need for this concerted patient-oriented research strategy is ultimately because healthcare is incredibly expensive. In 2013, in Canada anyway, we expended over $200 billion in healthcare expenses. So if there is a way that we can generate treatments and therapies that are a lot more applicable to a lot more people for a cheaper for a fraction of the cost, that certainly is something that should be considered, as ultimately the more revenue you free up, the more you can do with that for other social services. So when we think of this SPORE strategy, ultimately, as we mentioned before, it is a pan-Canadian coalition of groups, so those provincial, federal, territorial partners that connect with the relevant stakeholders, so your children's hospitals, your community organizations, with the aim of these connections to focus on patient-identified research priorities and to subsequently apply this knowledge generated through these research strategies in the healthcare system. So ultimately what it is we are attempting this concerted effort to look at patient priorities, so the outcomes that they deem interest and perhaps of more relevance to them in their immediate state, and how these particular interventions can be more effectively be incorporated in the overall healthcare system, so that healthcare practices can be improved and have more of an impact on patient health and their unique outcomes. So what is patient-oriented research? Well, you can think of it, and this is something we'll get into a bit more over the following 3 sessions, is that patient-oriented research is a continuum that engages patients as partners. So it's more than just incorporating patients in an initial survey. It is allowing them more direct access to your governing boards and how research priorities are set, how they are explored, and all the way to helping with disseminating the results and pushing for systemic change by relaying these critical outcomes to healthcare system decision makers. So not only is it a research continuum that interacts with patients at a much higher level, it does incorporate a multidisciplinary research team. So you're looking at your dietitians, your nurses, your pharmacists, your physical therapists, your occupational therapists. They're all working together to tackle these very difficult conditions in a more concerted manner. Since this is definitely a more viable strategy than just poking a mouse in your lab. And as we've mentioned before, what sets this strategy apart is that it is focusing on patient-identified priorities and with the real impetus of improving patient outcomes. That's ultimately the end goal here, is to interact with patients and have research results that are more immediately pertinent to their situation and improves their outcome. So in Canada, the strategy for patient-oriented research has been active for a few years now, and as of yet, we have 7 chronic disease spores. So we have Chalbright, we have a few focusing on chronic kidney disease, diabetes, as well as you have your gut inflammatory conditions such as Crohn's and the chronic pain network. So all of these networks are structured somewhat differently, but they are all focusing on those basic tenets of patient-oriented research and putting the patient first and looking at outcomes that have, as I mentioned, have a more immediate effect on their conditions. Now, speaking to the sort of national perspective, as you can see, Chalbright is spread across Canada, and all 12 projects have bases in various provinces. So it truly is a pan-Canadian research network, and it definitely is a really cool experiment in having such a large network of researchers come together with one goal. And it's definitely been a challenge setting this network up, but hopefully this great experiment will pay off, and we will definitely hopefully see more of a need for patient-oriented research in Canada in the future. All right, so that was quite a lot of information to dump on you. So if there's any questions, I will definitely welcome that now. All right, so we'll move on. And so that's actually bringing us to the end of our webinar for today. So we definitely, luckily, made it below time, which is great. So for the remainder of the session, we are just going to focus on the studentship projects. So as we mentioned before, there are 7 topics, and I hope you've had a chance to review them in the package. But if not, we'll have them on the screen here. And as I bring them up, we have a few of those informational diagrams that I was mentioning before as perhaps one of the options for the outcome that you produce. And as I bring up the topics, I've kind of organized them based on perhaps a suggested informational diagram that you can generate if you so choose. So first up is comparing patient-oriented research with the traditional way of doing things, and perhaps a way that you can explore that idea is with a Venn diagram. Next up is the idea of looking at the various components that need to be in place for effective patient-oriented research to be conducted. Next, we can suggest a mind map of some sort, exploring either what sort of challenges are unique to engaging in this type of research within a pediatric setting. So, kind of what Chalbright is doing, because what makes our network unique compared to the other chronic disease spores is that ultimately we are working with pediatric patients, and most of the time what that means is we are actually interacting with their surrogates. So their parents are the ones that are making decisions about their care and perhaps their research involvement. So that's a bit different than engaging with adults who are fully competent and fully engaged in their research project. And another topic you might want to explore with the mind map is what the benefits of patient-oriented research is, and perhaps that I can go back to the idea of how this differs from traditional health research. Yeah, that's a great way to perhaps look at that. Next up is we're suggesting a flowchart of some type. The topics that we have grouped under this type of arrangement is seeing patients as partners. How do we actually build a productive and effective partnership that moves away from this idea of a tokenistic sort of interaction? The next part there is how to ensure you are integrating this sort of research strategy in your work as a researcher. And again, not just playing lip service to the idea, but engaging with patients as partners. And lastly, I guess this can be more of a debrief at the end of the session, is just getting your ideas and on your reflections on patient-oriented research. How has it changed your view on health research? Will it change what you do in the future? So that would just be a great way to kind of gauge your thoughts on that perspective. All right. So I thought we'd be running out of time when I set this presentation up. So I took the liberty of randomizing your names beforehand, and I think Shannon is still not here. So if not, we'll probably skip over her name when she comes up, and she'll have to select from the final versions. Let me just double check if she's here or not. No. Okay. So so I inputted your names in this list randomizer, and they did their magic and randomized your names. So drum roll, I guess. First up, we have Eliza, so you get first pick, and we'll go to the next. On the next page, we'll select in sequence. So it's going to be Eliza, not Shannon, Leo, Simon, Chelsea, Brett, and yeah, so that's going to be our list. So I have the topics listed here. So I am going to have you guys just select them in real time. So you can either type it in the chat box or just shout out when we get to your name. And I'll just make sure we record it, and then you can be on your merry way. And of course, if you have any follow-up questions throughout the period on how you're tackling it, or if you have any concerns, yeah, feel free to just send me an email or connect, and we can definitely chat about it. All right, so Eliza, so you are up first. Do you have a preference? All right, so Eliza picked theme number 2. All right, so Shannon, I believe, is not here. So Leo, you are next. Any preference, Leo? All right, so
Yeah, sorry, I just typed it in.
okay, you picked topic number 1. Great, thank you.
Yes, please.
All right, and then we have Simon. All right, so Simon picked number 3. Great. And then we have Chelsea.
I will do number 7.
Number 7. Great. And then lastly, Brett. I don't even know what options you have anymore. So we've taken 1, 2, 3, and 7. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, and 7. Okay. All right. Number 5. Great. Terrific. All right, great. So yeah, so we'll send a reminder out for that. And that went much smoother than I thought it would be, so that's great. So I'll just reach out to Shannon with the remaining options, and she can pick what is remaining. All right, so again, if you have any questions, feel free to chat me up or send me an email. That'd be great. So looking at our next steps, our follow-up session is scheduled for Thursday, August 3rd. It's going to be at the same time. And just a reminder that there is going to be along with the pre-webinar material that you can review, there is going to be the pre-webinar discussion questions. So please feel free to tackle those either with your assigned partner or on your own, and just make sure you have that done by, I guess, August 1st. And if you haven't taken, I guess I should show you that, just in the event that did not show up. If you open your pre-webinar discussion questions, it should have your name assigned with your partner if it connects. There we go. So as you can see on the discussion questions, you've been assigned with another recipient, and you can feel free to connect with them and collaborate. And I'll make sure that you have everyone's emails, and if not, please feel free just to reach out to me, and I can connect you. And what was the last thing that you make mention of? Oh, yes. So briefly following the survey. So Chelsea, I'll make sure I'll send you that Word document. But we'll also send out the link as a reminder to complete the post webinar survey. So if there's no other questions that you have, thank you for joining us for this intro session, and we're looking forward to delving into this idea in a bit more details over the remaining series of webinars. So yeah, I'm happy that today we finished on time. So thank you so much again, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.